Hello YouTube. I want to talk today about the Transportation Security Administration and their egregious violations of human dignity. Now, I realize that I have discussed this topic on multiple occasions. I've probably made at least 4 videos directly addressing this topic, and I've probably mentioned it briefly on other videos as well. But the fact of the matter is that for one reason or another, this topic irritates me perhaps more than anything else occurring today. Now, perhaps that's hyperbolic, but it seems that it's occupying my thoughts in a negative sense more so than the vast majority of other geopolitical societal occurrences today. And I realize this is irrational given the fact that there are substantially more horrific things occurring in our world today. For instance, mass environmental devastation, corporate injustice, the hierarchy at the fabric of our society that dehumanizes us, the economic crisis, mass murder perpetrated by the United States government in Iraq, Pakistan, Afghanistan, and now Yemen and Libya. The list goes on. Police murdering people with impunity and immunity and harassing homeless people, etc. I mean, there are certainly substantially more horrific things occurring than the TSA molesting people at the airport. There are some equally horrific, and there are other substantially more horrific things occurring, which is, of course, deeply unfortunate that there are substantially more horrific things occurring than the government molesting people as young as 2 years old at the airport, but for some reason or another, it annoys me substantially, irritates me, and enrages me substantially more than a lot of the other negative things occurring in the world today. Now, part of that is the fact that it does, in terms of its implications, it could well be one of the worst things that is occurring in terms of the broader gradual setting up of a complete surveillance police state akin to 1984. This is obviously just one, the TSA is just obviously one facet of this gradual escalation in civil liberties violations and degradation and dehumanization. But really, I don't know but just in and of itself, this issue of the TSA molesting passengers bothers me at a really fundamental level. And so it is a microcosm and highly representative of the general drive that this culture has that guides many of the destructive and negative actions that we see taking place today, and that is the desire to control, the desire to violate people, to render them helpless, and as a means, and inducing fear as a means of controlling, mediating, managing people so that they do not, quote-unquote, get out of line, so they do not resist, dissent, or so it's gotten to the point at this point in time where they don't even want people to act as if they are human. They are eroding our very humanness, and this is like the in this era of where the possibility of human cloning is becoming more pervasive, and with nanotechnology and genetic engineering, we see this control drive reaching perhaps its apotheosis that will perhaps ultimately result in the destruction of the human species and much of the living world in its entirety. So in that sense, perhaps that's part of the reason it irritates me, because it is a microcosm of that. It is, as Derek Jensen points out in multiple books he has written, it is this, it is the dynamic between abuser and abused really defines this entire culture, and you see this on a very blatant, in-your-face, individual level with the actions of the TSA. They're saying, we can abuse you, we can make you at the very least feel uncomfortable in the worst cases, and especially with former abuse victims, traumatize you at a fundamental level, and you must submit, you must acquiesce to this violation, to us feeling your body, this traumatization, and if you do not, you will face consequences. And that's it's creating a nation, even more so than already is the case, of victims, of the abused, of the violated, of the traumatized, with the thousands or millions of flyers in this country having to, simply in order to board an airplane, be psychologically terrorized. And perhaps that's a hyperbolic term for some, but for those that it is a highly hyperbolic term, or for those that it's a complete misrepresentation of their actual feelings, that is, for those who do not mind being molested by the TSA, that's really the frightening aspect, because they've already had their humanity destroyed to such an extent that they are numb to, or feel they feel numb to, or feel helpless in the face of, or feel, let me put this simply. If you're unaffected by molestation, it means that you've been traumatized beyond the point of, that you've been essentially so heavily traumatized or rendered docile and acquiescent by this culture that you don't react in a normal fashion to abuse, that you don't mind abuse. And, when you have a society where people don't mind abuse, you essentially have a society of robots. You essentially have a society where there's no hope, because no one has the fortitude, the dignity, the remnants, enough remnants of their very humanness to resist this inhumane degradation by the powers that be, this dehumanization. So I thought of a list of sorts of 4 potential reactions to abuse, and I think this is helpful for describing the current TSA situation. So when something that is unnatural occurs to you, when you are violated, traumatized, abused, or even made minimally discomforted, there are 4 potential reactions. If you can think of more, let me know. These are the 4 I came up with, and it really speaks to the difficulty I'm having deciding how to react personally to the actions of the TSA, and any injustice that I see. And one option is you can normalize the situation. That is, when something unnatural occurs to you, when something traumatizing occurs in your life, you can psychologically rationalize it, normalize it, pretend that it is normal. Pretend that it is a natural action. This can occur with rape, with the TSA molesting people, with people going to their 9-to-5 job, and rationalizing the entire economic paradigm in our society that people should have to work in order to eat, when that's only been the case for 10,000 years out of the 60,000 years of humans in their present form, or by some estimates 80,000 years. So it's essentially, another way to say it is rationalization. You, in order to get on with your life, in order to simply continue living, functioning on a day-to-day basis, if something is upsetting enough to you, you have the option of normalizing or rationalizing it. And okay, so option 2 is you have the option of resisting. You have the option of taking action so that you can to feel better about the situation in which you were treated unjustly, or injustices that you see taking place in society. You can resist them in some fashion, and that helps you stay sane as well and function on a day-to-day basis. In a, I would argue, a substantially healthier fashion than normalization. If you're raped and you're saying I deserved it, if you're treated in an unjustified fashion by the TSA and you think I deserve it, it's normal, it's not that big a deal, I can get over it, then you're dehumanizing. You're accomplishing what they want to accomplish, and that is dehumanizing you to the point where you're not reacting as a human being. Option 3, suppression. You can simply relegate the experience to the depths of your subconscious, and this, like normalization, I feel is highly detrimental, because what it amounts to is Again, not feeling what you're naturally supposed to feel, not feeling what you should be feeling as a human being. Like normalization, it is necessary to one degree or another in various circumstances in order to live. If you undergo a particularly traumatic experience and you cannot resist sufficiently, you're not in a position to resist sufficiently to be able to tolerate it, to be able to get on with your life as a catharsis. If you're not able to resist to the extent that you have sufficient catharsis, suppression and normalization can both become necessary to get through the day. But it's indicative of the fact that the oppressors have won to some degree or another. Because when you suppress something to your subconscious, it doesn't just go away. It doesn't just become something that doesn't bother you at all. It may not consciously bother you, but it gradually eats away at you. It metastasizes and mutates in your subconscious without you realizing it, and becomes potentially a bit bigger issue in the long term, etc. And then the fourth reaction is anger and just now that I think about it, the fourth option kind of is intertwined with the others and is not necessarily along the same lines. It's because it's an emotion, but you can become angry or depressed or just right. It's fairly weak. I had something better in mind, but yeah, you can simply become angry and depressed, and this is only a temporary solution. Perhaps like all of these, unless unless resistance is effective in undermining the policy, resisting the policy, or is done at a fundamental enough level, or substantially enough where you actually gain a genuine feeling of relief and catharsis, the colonized when they resist the colonizers, even and potentially especially violently. This can be empowering because it shows that they have the ability to not simply take the oppression, that they, as human beings, they are capable of asserting their rights to exist as free sovereign human beings. This can apply to various instances of colonization throughout history, leading up to the present, where you have Iraqi so-called insurgents resisting the U.S. occupation rather than simply lying down and letting their family members be massacred by the United States government without any kind of resistance. They're choosing to resist, and this can be cathartic. So, I think this applies very much to the TSA. As in any other instance of traumatization, of violation at the hands of people who feel entitled to oppress you. So this is something I'm struggling with because, admittedly, I'm not doing much to resist. And, I can list excuses, but it's not to say that I do absolutely nothing. I mean, for one thing, the YouTube videos probably have a minimally positive effect in quote-unquote waking some people up. But there is no question that I don't do enough to resist. I certainly don't do enough to resist so that I can... The abuses that the TSA are engaging in irritate me at a fundamental level on a continuous basis. And the extent to which I'm resisting the limited extent to which I'm resisting does not undermine that very much. It does not make me much less upset, angry, etc. And then continual anger is not sufficient because, again, that in and of itself inhibits your ability to function on a daily basis. And then when you're continually angry and you're continually bombarded with the insanity of the United States government and etc., you kind of become like numb to it at some point, and you're in danger of becoming apathetic. This video is almost over, so I'm going to continue this with part 2. So stay tuned for part 2.